I need to start this exactly the way it unfolded, because if I try to soften it or make it sound cinematic from the beginning, it loses the part that scares me most, how ordinary everything was before my life split cleanly in two. My name is Mara Lewis, and before last autumn I was the kind of woman who believed that cheating was something that happened in dramatic households, fights in parking lots, lipstick on collars, secret burner phones. Not in quiet apartments with expensive candles and matching ceramic dinnerware. Not in marriages built on polite routines and shared grocery lists. Definitely not in mine. My husband, Aaron, was an IT systems architect, steady, methodical, the sort of man who excelled at making the world predictable. I used to admire that about him. After a chaotic upbringing, being married to stability felt like winning the lottery. Until stability slowly became invisibility. It wasn't that he was cruel. He wasn't. He was decent. Sensible. Boring in all the ways that feel safe at 25 and suffocating at 32. Our conversations shrank until they were mostly logistics. Who's grabbing milk? Can you call the plumber? Are we doing your sister's birthday or mine this year? He never asked what I wanted. I never volunteered. We drifted without arguing and called it peace. If you had asked me what I thought marriage was supposed to feel like, I would have told you exactly that, peace. Now I know better. Peace and numbness wear the same face if you don't look closely. Everything changed the night our firm landed a contract with the Shoreline, a luxury hotel on the edge of the pier, half modern, half Art Deco fantasy, all warm lighting and whispered elegance. They hired me as the lead experience designer for their Havana-inspired expansion. The showpiece was a music lounge called the Glass Wall, named for its sweeping curved window that looked out over the ocean. At night, warm neon washed the walls like liquid sunset, and smoky air curled between the guests like it had its own agenda. I fell in love with the space long before I met the man who would ruin it for me. His name was Cole Thatcher. The first time I saw him, he was leaning over the long teak bar, discussing whiskey flights with the beverage director. He was new, the hotel's freshly hired hospitality strategist, but he moved like he already owned the room. Not loudly. Not arrogantly. With a quiet gravity that pulled people toward him. His sleeves were rolled up. His voice was low and steady. His smile was the slow sort, the kind that didn't flash but unfolded, deliberate and devastating. His hands were expressive, confident, capable. I knew instantly that he was dangerous. Not because he flirted. Because he paid attention. Real attention. Undiluted. Unhurried. Undivided. He turned when Evelyn, the hotel director, introduced me. "This is Mara," she said. "She's designing the entire guest experience for the lounge." She said it proudly. Like I was a prize she was showing off. Cole looked at me, and something in his gaze shifted, like he was tuning a radio and had just found the right frequency. "Mara," he said slowly, testing the name. "I've heard about your work." I asked him what he'd heard. He said that you see things in rooms most people don't notice. He wasn't flirting. He was observing. And it startled me how much I wanted to be seen like that. Avoiding that realization became my first lie. We started working closely on the glass wall, lighting, acoustics, guest movement flow, emotional cues embedded in design. It was thrilling work, the sort of project designers dream about. But it was the long nights that undid me. The room transformed after hours. The ocean roared against the window like a heartbeat. Neon glowed in slow pulses. Jazz riffs echoed faintly from rehearsing musicians. And Cole was always there. We didn't flirt. We didn't touch. But tension formed like condensation on the glass, inevitable, silent, impossible to ignore. He watched me work with an intensity that felt like a hand at the small of my back. He asked questions no one else asked. Why did I choose warm white instead of golden amber for the chandelier flicker? Why did I position the couches to create slightly diagonal lines instead of clean symmetry? Why did I place the bar's focal lights at 7-degree offsets? The way he asked wasn't performative. It was reverent. And the way I answered was embarrassing. I lit up. I talked too much. I gave more of myself than I meant to. He noticed that too. One night, around midnight, as we stood on opposite sides of the room examining the neon reflections on the window, he said softly, "I can always tell when someone cares about their work. But I've never seen someone care like you do." I felt my breath catch. Not from the compliment. From the truth of it. Aaron had never once asked why I loved what I loved. He supported me, sure, financially, politely, but he had never asked what any of my choices meant. Cole asked. And I answered. And that was the beginning of the fracture. The second fracture came from something small. They always do. I was adjusting a lighting script one evening when my phone buzzed with a message from Aaron. "Working late again. Don't wait up." No question. No warmth. No curiosity. Just a status update, like he was resetting the thermostat. I stared at the words longer than I should have. Cole appeared beside me. He wasn't intrusive, just close enough that I felt his presence, warm and steady. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I told him I was fine. It was a reflex. A lie delivered out of muscle memory. But he didn't accept it like everyone else did. He said, "You don't look fine." I laughed, the brittle kind, the kind that hides fractures instead of fixing them. He didn't look away. He said, "Whatever it is, you don't have to pretend with me." The room felt smaller. The ocean louder. And my marriage felt like a distant, colorless frame somewhere behind me. I told him about Aaron, briefly, vaguely, safely. Not the cheating. Not the suspicion. Just the distance. The routine. The silent erosion of something that was supposed to last. When I finished, Cole didn't offer advice. He didn't pity me. He simply said, "I'm sorry he doesn't see you." That shouldn't have broken me. But it did. Because it was the truth I had been avoiding for years. I didn't cry. Not yet. But something inside me tipped. Shifted. Cracked. The third fracture was the night we tested the full lighting choreography. The room was empty except for us. The neon buzzed, low and warm. The chandeliers dimmed and brightened in slow waves like breathing. Smoke from an earlier tasting lingered in the air, softening the edges of everything. I stood in the center of the lounge, eyes closed, head tilted slightly upward, letting the lighting wash over my skin. I felt him watching me before I opened my eyes. He was near the bar, arms crossed loosely, leaning back against the counter. The glow behind him made the edges of his body look like they were lit from within. When our eyes met, the air changed. It wasn't cinematic. It was terrifying. Because in that split second, I realized I wanted him. Not the idea of him. Him. The way he listened. The way he watched. The way I felt in my own skin when he was near. He murmured, "You make this room come alive." I told him the room was doing the hard work on its own. He shook his head. "No. It's you." I should have stepped back. Instead, I stepped forward. Only an inch. He mirrored me. Only an inch. Those 2 inches destroyed every boundary I had tried to keep intact. I forced myself to look away, breaking the spell. I grabbed my tablet and said something about checking the bar lighting pattern again. He let me go. But I felt his gaze on my back the entire walk across the room. The fourth fracture was the worst because it was quiet. I came home one night, later than usual, heartbeat still attuned to the rhythm of Cole's voice, and found Aaron sitting on the couch, staring at his phone. He looked up when I entered. I waited for the usual half-hearted greeting. Instead, he said, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. He turned his phone around. On the screen was a photo. Not of me cheating. But close. It was me standing too close to Cole. Too close for colleagues. Too close for a married woman. We weren't touching. We weren't kissing. But my face was turned toward him with an expression I didn't recognize, soft, open, almost glowing. And his gaze, focused on me, held a warmth that was unmistakable. The timestamp was midnight. The sender was unknown. Aaron said, "Who is he?" I said, "A colleague." He waited. I didn't elaborate. He swallowed hard. Then he asked the question in a quiet voice. "Are you unhappy with me?" That should have been the moment I broke. I should have admitted everything, my loneliness, my confusion, the thing growing between me and Cole. Instead, I lied. "No," I said. "I'm just tired." Tired. The most convenient lie. The safest lie. The worst lie. He looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded, slowly, like someone accepting a verdict they had expected but hoped wouldn't come. We went to bed without touching. We didn't speak the next morning. He left before sunrise. I stared at the empty half of the bed and felt something inside me sink so deeply I knew it would never fully surface again. The next night, I went back to the glass wall. I told myself it was work. I told myself I needed to retest the lighting cues. I told myself 1,000 things. But the truth? I went because I needed someone to look me in the eyes and tell me I wasn't a ghost. Cole was already there when I arrived. He looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. Like someone had been carrying something heavy all day. He asked if I was okay. I said no. No lies this time. He stepped closer. I didn't step away. He whispered, "Tell me what you need." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He reached out, slowly, giving me time to retreat. I didn't. His fingers touched my cheek. The warmth of his hand was the first time in years I felt held by anyone. I closed my eyes. That was all the permission he needed. He kissed me. Soft at first. Then deeper. Hotter. Desperate. Like two people trying to breathe the same air because the world outside didn't have enough oxygen. I kissed him back. Years of loneliness collapsed into seconds of hunger. He lifted me onto the bar counter. I wrapped my legs around him. The neon painted our skin in red and gold. We didn't sleep together that night. But everything that mattered already happened. The marriage was broken. The promise was broken. I was broken. And the worst part? I wanted more. I wasn't ready for the twist that was coming. The one that would prove the universe has a sick sense of humor. Because while I was drowning in guilt and desire, someone was watching. Someone who already knew the truth. Someone who wasn't done with me. Not by a long shot. I wish I could tell you that the first time I kissed Cole on the bar counter of the glass wall, I came to my senses the next day and walked away. That I looked at myself in the mirror, saw the smear of warm neon still clinging to my skin, and decided I was not going to be that woman. I did look in the mirror. I did not walk away. The next morning I woke up with the taste of him still somewhere in the back of my mind. It was not like in the movies, where everything is drenched in guilt and tragic violin music. It was worse. I felt both sick and alive at the same time. Like my body had finally remembered something essential, and my conscience was sprinting behind it, trying to catch up. Aaron left early, as usual. He stood at the foot of the bed and said he was heading into the office, that there was a deployment, that he might be late. His words were as flat as a notification banner. I nodded without looking at him for too long, because if I did, I was afraid he would somehow see what I had done written on my face. He bent down and brushed his lips across my forehead out of habit. The contact made my stomach twist. Not because it was tender. Because it was nothing. An empty gesture, like checking a box on a form. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. The indentation where my ring sat looked deeper, redder, like it knew what I had just done. I should have called in sick. I should have gone to my sister's. I should have booked a hotel room somewhere far from neon and glass and jazz. Instead, I got dressed, put on concealer under my eyes, and went back to the one place where my heart was already halfway across the room from me. The glass wall. When I walked in, the daytime light made everything look different. Less seductive, more clinical. The huge curved window looked out over a gray, restless sea. The neon signs were switched off, just dull shapes clinging to the walls. The chandeliers were unlit skeletons hanging from the ceiling. Staff moved through the space with mugs of coffee, setting up for the evening as if last night had not happened, as if the air did not still taste like confession and citrus and smoke. He was at the far end of the room, by the window, inspecting the new seating charts. When he heard my footsteps, he turned. For 1 second, panic flashed through me. What if he treated last night like a mistake? What if he acted normal? What if he smiled politely and made a joke about long hours? He did none of those things. His expression softened, but there was gravity in it. His eyes ran over my face, searching for something. Regret. Anger. Fear. When he realized I was none of those things, he exhaled, like he had been holding his breath all morning. He came closer, but he stopped at a respectable distance. He told me quietly that he had not slept. That he had spent half the night replaying what happened, wondering whether he had crossed a line I could never forgive. He said if I told him it could never happen again, he would accept it. No arguments, no pressure, no attempts to persuade me. I felt something in my chest loosen at those words. It was such a strange sense of safety, hearing that he would respect a boundary I knew I did not intend to draw. I told him that I had kissed him back, deliberately, consciously, sober. That whatever had happened was not something he had done to me, it was something I had done with him. I admitted that I was lost, that my marriage felt like a house that had already burned down while I was still dusting the shelves, pretending the walls were not ash. I told him I did not know what this thing between us was, only that it was real, and that terrified me. He listened with that steady focus of his, shoulders tight, jaw clenched like he was trying very hard not to reach out for me. He said that he cared about me, that this was not a game, not a conquest, not a way to pass time in a hotel on the pier. He said that he had been fighting this pull since the first week, and that he was tired of pretending it did not exist. Then he said something that should have made me run. He said that if we did this, there was no way to keep it neat. No safe compartment. No clean boundaries where nothing leaked through. He warned me that it would get messy, that we could hurt each other, that whatever we thought we were in control of now would not feel that way later. I heard all of that. And I still chose him. I wish I could blame the room, the lighting, the music. It is easier to blame an atmosphere than your own choices. But I walked into that decision with my eyes open. We did not kiss again that morning. Instead, we went through the seating layout like two professionals, adjusting angles, arguing over sight lines. But there was a different current between us now. Every time his hand passed mine, my skin prickled. Every time I stepped close to the bar, I saw in my mind the way his hands had gripped the polished wood on either side of my hips. By the time we finished for the day, I was exhausted from feeling so much in so short a time. That night, I texted Aaron and asked if we could have dinner together sometime this week. Not a trick question. Not a test. I wanted to know if there was anything left to salvage. He replied that he was drowning in work and asked if next week was possible. There are answers that are technically reasonable and emotionally unforgivable. That was one. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed that it was fine. I told myself this was the conversation I had been missing. The chance for him to show up. Instead, he had given me a postponement, like I was something he would get around to when the rest of his life was under control. I turned my phone over and left it face down on the table. I did not tell him I was going back to the glass wall. The affair did not explode into being in one single dramatic moment. It was a series of small permissions I gave myself, each one easier than the last. I allowed my hand to linger on his forearm when we stood over the lighting console together. I allowed myself to sit too close to him in the back office while we reviewed revenue projections and set lists. I allowed my knee to lean against his under the narrow little desk, pretending that the cramped space was to blame. One night, I allowed him to kiss me again. This time not in a rush against the bar, but slowly, seated on one of the low velvet couches after closing. The room was nearly dark, lit only by the ghost of light seeping in from the hallway. The window showed a reflection of us in the glass, a faint echo of two people who belonged to another life. He kissed me like we had all the time in the world. Like there was nothing outside that room but the sound of the ocean and the thrum of the building. After that, there was no pretense. We were having an affair. We did not say the word out loud, but it hung over everything like smoke. The guilt did not disappear. It just took on a new shape. I would lie in bed next to Aaron at night, listening to the even rhythm of his breathing, and feel torn straight down the middle. On one side, the life I had built over years. Mortgage payments. Shared accounts. Family holidays. On the other, the life that only existed between certain hours in a neon-soaked lounge. Some nights, when Aaron fell asleep without so much as touching my shoulder, I felt a flare of defiance that burned away part of the guilt. I thought of him and whoever had sent that photo of me and Cole. I thought of the anonymous number. The message with no context. Someone somewhere had already decided I was doing something wrong, long before I ever crossed the line. Other nights, when he rolled over in his sleep and threw an arm over my waist out of outdated habit, the guilt came back so strong I had to bite my knuckles to keep from sobbing. I lived in that split space for weeks. Then the next message came. This time, it was sent to me. It arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, in the dead middle of an ordinary email task at my desk. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. No contact photo. No preview text. I glanced at it, intending to ignore it, but my eye caught one detail. There was an attached image. My lungs tightened. I unlocked the phone with shaking fingers. The message contained a single line of text and a photo. The text said that I should be more careful where I stood. The photo was of me and Cole at the glass wall. We were in the far corner, near the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the ocean. I remembered the moment. He had been pointing out how the reflection of the neon looked like it was bleeding into the water. I had laughed, said something about the sea swallowing our sins. Dark joke, in hindsight. In the photo, my head was tilted toward him, his body angled toward mine. We looked like we were wrapped in our own small world. The angle of the photo was unsettling. It was not taken by a guest with a phone across the room. It was slightly elevated, clean, without the blur of a zoom. Security camera, my mind whispered. My eyes flicked up instinctively, as if I could see through the ceiling of my office to wherever the lenses were embedded in the lounge. For a moment, my whole body felt hollow. I read the text again. More careful where you stand. There was no demand. No threat. No signature. Just a warning wrapped in quiet menace. I forwarded the image to no one. I did not respond. I took a screenshot, my thumb hovering over Aaron's name, then withdrew. If I sent it, the conversation it would start would not be the one we needed. Instead, I printed it. I needed to see it on paper. It looked even worse printed. The warmth of the neon glowed off the glossy surface. I could not deny the intimacy. If I had seen that photo of Aaron with someone else, I would not have believed there was an innocent explanation. I slipped it into the back of my notebook and went to the one person who made any sense in the madness. Cole. He was in the lounge, talking to the bar manager about a new cocktail menu. When he saw my face, his expression immediately sharpened. He asked if something had happened. I told him we needed to talk somewhere private. We went to the narrow corridor behind the bar, the one that led to the staff bathroom and dry storage. It smelled of citrus cleaning products and spilled beer. The hum of the fridge compressors was loud, but not loud enough to drown out the sound of my heart. I handed him the printout without saying a word. He looked at it. His jaw clenched. I watched his gaze scan the frame, the angle, the timestamp. He swore under his breath, a word I had not heard him use before. He asked who had sent it. I told him it had come from an unknown number and showed him the message. He frowned. He said that the angle was from the ceiling camera near the south corner. The one the security company had insisted on for coverage. He said that only management and security had access to that feed. I asked if he thought Evelyn had sent it. He shook his head. He said Evelyn was ruthless but discreet, that if she wanted to fire us for misconduct she would not hint, she would call us into her office and let HR do the rest. He suggested another possibility. Aaron. The word felt like a slap. I wanted to argue. How would Aaron have access to the hotel's security system? Why would he send a photo to me instead of confronting me outright? It did not fit the cautious, conflict-avoidant man I knew. Cole said that whoever sent it wanted to unsettle us, not destroy us. If it had gone to Aaron first, it would have been a bomb. Sent to me, it was a slow-acting poison. My hand shook. He reached out, steadying my wrist with his fingertips. He said that if someone was watching us that closely, we had to be careful. He suggested less physical contact on the floor, no lingering conversations in obvious sightlines, no more staying together after hours in view of any camera. He did not say we needed to stop. The thought did not even come up between us. Our solution to being watched was not to stop. It was to get better at hiding. That part still shames me more than anything. After the second photo, paranoia seeped into everything. I became hyper-aware of every lens in the glass wall. Tiny black domes in the ceiling corners. Discrete fixtures tucked into downlight casings. The massive glass wall itself, which reflected the room back at us at night, making it impossible to tell where one reality stopped and another began. I noticed that the same older man in a navy blazer sat at the bar 3 nights in a row, nursing a single drink, watching the room with a little too much focus. I noticed that one of the security guards took a special interest in where I stood. I noticed the way Evelyn's glances lingered on me and Cole when we discussed schedules. At home, the apartment started to feel like a stage. Aaron's phone was always face down. He stayed later and later at work. His answers were shorter. We were like two colleagues sharing a rental, polite and careful not to bump into each other's secrets. One evening, I came home early and heard his voice from the bedroom. Not raised, but softer than I had heard it in months. Warmer. There was a tone to it that I remembered from our early days. The way he used to talk to me. That warmth used to be mine. I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening. He said that he missed the way things used to be. That he was trying to figure out the right thing to do. That he felt like he was already halfway out of his own life and did not know how to step all the way out or all the way back in. I heard a woman's voice on the other end, faint, comforting. She told him he could not live like that forever. That eventually he would have to choose. I did not hear her name. I did not step into the doorway. I walked back out, closed the front door loudly, and announced my arrival as if I had just come home. He hung up quickly, emerging from the bedroom with his phone in his hand and his face composed. He told me he was just on a work call, that things were hectic. He asked how my day was. I lied reflexively. I said it was fine. We made dinner. We ate in front of the television. An entirely forgettable evening in a life that was disintegrating. Later, in bed, I lay awake thinking about the woman who had told him he could not live halfway forever. I wondered if he had already chosen. I wondered when I would. The third message came 10 days after the second. This time, there was no photo. Just a video link. The text said that I should see myself from the outside. My pulse thudded in my ears. I sat alone in the staff office at the glass wall, the door locked, the hum of refrigeration units muffled through the walls. I clicked the link. The security footage was grainy but clear enough. The angle was high, pointed down toward the bar. Timestamp, 3 nights earlier, around 1:30 in the morning. I watched myself walking behind the bar, stacking glassware, laughing at something off-frame. Then Cole entered the shot, going around the end of the bar to speak with me. Our bodies angled toward each other. The room was nearly empty, staff were cleaning. He leaned in, said something that made me tilt my head back in laughter. Even without sound, I could read the familiarity in the way we moved. Then, in the video, he stepped closer, too close. His hand brushed my lower back in a way that was unmistakably intimate. It was quick. A fraction of a second. If you blinked, you would miss it. The footage slowed at that moment. Replayed in loop. Over and over. His hand. My slight lean into it. The tiny orbit our bodies made. The message under the link said that the hotel code of conduct had clear language about this kind of thing. I felt cold. Whoever was sending these had access not only to the raw footage but also to editing tools. They were isolating the worst moments. Emphasizing them. This was not someone trying to warn me. This was someone building a file. A case. A noose. Fear settled deep in my ribs. Not abstract embarrassment. Real fear. Of losing my job. Of being exposed. Of having the affair used as leverage. I thought of going to Evelyn. Telling her everything. Begging for discretion. But the power imbalance stopped me. I did not know if she was the one sending these. I did not know if she already knew. I thought of going to Aaron. Telling him the whole truth before someone else did. But the image of his face looking at that video froze me. If our positions were reversed, I would never be able to unsee it. Instead of choosing honesty, I did what I had become best at. I hid. I deleted the message, even though I knew that did not make it disappear. I sat there, hands numb, listening to my heart pound, until it occurred to me that there was one person who might know exactly what kind of game was being played. Not because he was clean. Because he was dirty in a different way. Cole. That night, after closing, I told him we needed to talk somewhere no cameras could see us. He suggested the service stairwell at the back of the building, the one that led down to the storage rooms and emergency exits. There was a flickering fluorescent strip, concrete walls, a faint smell of damp metal and old paint. I showed him the link, the edited clip, the text. For a few seconds, his face was unreadable. Then anger flashed through him, sharp and dangerous. Not the hot, impulsive kind. The cold kind. He said that whoever was sending these knew what they were doing. They were building pressure. Softening us up. Hurting us toward a decision. I asked what decision. He said that people who collect leverage usually want one of 3 things: money, silence, or obedience. The words made my skin crawl. He said that if it was only about punishing us, the messages would have gone to HR or Aaron already. The fact that they came to us directly meant the sender wanted to control us first. I asked if he had any idea who it could be. He hesitated for a fraction too long. I caught it. I asked him straight out what he wasn't telling me. His gaze flicked to the door at the top of the stairs, as if he expected someone to burst in. He admitted that he had enemies. That in his previous posts, he had exposed some shady practices, shut down some backroom deals. That he had stepped on toes. He said there were people in the hospitality industry who would love to watch him drown in a slow scandal. That explanation sounded plausible. It also felt incomplete. Looking back, I think he was only giving me as much of the truth as he thought I could stand. That was his biggest mistake. Because by then, I was already drowning. Another ounce would not have made the difference. I asked if he thought the sender might be Aaron again. He shook his head immediately this time. He said if Aaron was the one behind this, we would already be in marital hell, not in this limbo. He suspected someone inside the hotel's upper levels or someone connected to the security provider. He suggested we quietly ask a favor of one of the technicians he trusted, to see if there were logs showing who had accessed the footage. I stared at him. It struck me then how far we had gone. We were no longer just two people sneaking kisses in a lounge. We were co-conspirators, trying to trace blackmailers in a building full of glass and secrets. I wondered what version of myself would look back at this stairwell and recognize the exact moment she could have turned around and walked away. We went forward anyway. The next day, he came to me with a name. He said that his tech contact had checked the logs. That there were unusual access patterns on the nights corresponding to the images. The IP address traced back not to Evelyn's office, not to corporate headquarters, not to an external vendor. It traced back to one of the hotel's guest suites. Suite 1403. He said that was the suite reserved for long-term executive stays. Vague. Flexible. Sometimes housing corporate owners, sometimes silent partners, sometimes people with money and reasons to stay unnoticed. He said he dug deeper. The suite was officially booked under a shell company. But staff gossip filled in the gaps. A quiet guest. Rarely seen. Paid in advance. Special notes from upper management to treat this person as if they were the building itself. I asked if he knew who it was. He said he had an idea. He looked reluctant to say it. By now, you know I hate half-truths. I pushed. He finally admitted that he suspected the man in 1403 was someone with a vested interest in controlling the narrative of the hotel. A silent investor. A fixer. Someone whose name drifted around high-end hospitality networks with the same weight as a rumor of fire. His name was Miles Kendall. It meant nothing to me. Cole said that was the point. Men like Miles worked best when no one outside certain circles knew their names. I asked why someone like that would care about two people having an affair in his lounge. The answer tasted bitter when he said it. Because scandal is expensive. Because when a hotel sells the illusion of seduction and safety, it cannot afford the wrong kind of mess. Because if there is going to be destruction, someone like Miles wants to own it and weaponize it. I asked what we were supposed to do. He said we could confront him. I laughed. The idea of marching up to a shadow investor's suite and accusing him of spying felt suicidal. He said our other option was to let him dictate the terms, and that would be worse. I asked him how he planned to confront someone like that. He said very quietly that he had dealt with men like that before, and that sometimes the only way to survive was to show them you were willing to burn your own life before letting them set it on fire. I did not fully understand what he meant. I understand now. At the time, I only knew one thing: the next message would dictate our next move. We did not have to wait long. That night, just before opening, my phone buzzed again. No image this time. No video. Just a time, a place, and a sentence. It told me to come to the glass wall at midnight, alone, and sit in the back left booth under the sconce with a small crack in it if I wanted to decide what happened next. I read it twice. A small crack in the sconce. No one would describe it that way unless they had been in the room enough to notice something like that, the tiny flaw in the perfect design, the single chip in the frosted glass I had meant to replace and never did. Someone knew the details. My details. Someone wanted me to step into their scene willingly. I showed the message to Cole. He told me I did not have to go. He said if anyone was walking into that booth at midnight, it should be him. For once, I disagreed. I said that this had started as my space. My room. My design. If someone was turning it into a theater, I was going to walk onto that stage myself. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said that if I insisted on going, he would at least insist on being nearby. He promised he would not enter the booth. He promised he would stay out of sight. He promised he would let me lead. I believed him. I did not yet know that midnight in that booth would show me a version of myself I had been avoiding for years. Not the cheating wife. Not the secret lover. The woman who had given away control of her own story and was finally, reluctantly, about to take it back. By meeting the man behind the glass. Face to face. Under a cracked sconce. with the whole ocean watching through a wall of reflection. And with my whole life reflected back at me whether I liked it or not. Midnight turned the glass wall into another world. Not the warm, seductive, crowded version guests saw on weekends. Not the soft-lit work-in-progress version we spent late nights adjusting. This was a different creature entirely, hollow, echoing, washed in dim copper light that flickered from the auxiliary sconces. The room looked older like this. More dangerous. More honest. The neon was off. The chandeliers were dimmed to a soft pulse. The ocean pressed itself against the rounded glass like it wanted to be let in. I stepped inside alone, per instructions. But I felt Cole's presence anyway. He had positioned himself somewhere out of sight, somewhere only he knew, watching without interfering. Keeping a promise that neither of us trusted but both of us needed. My heels were too loud on the hardwood floor as I crossed the room toward the back left booth, the one with the cracked sconce. The flaw was small, almost invisible unless you designed the space. But whoever sent the message had noticed. That alone made my skin prickle. The booth glowed faintly, a warm ring of amber around the table. A single glass of water sat in the center, untouched, clear as waiting. I slid into the leather seat. For a moment, nothing happened. The hotel hummed around me. The ocean whispered against the pier. The air conditioning vent rattled faintly above. Then I sensed movement, slow, deliberate, entering the lounge from the private hallway to the right. A man approached. Not rushed. Not cautious. Just certain. He was tall, mid-50s perhaps, with dark hair going gray at the temples. Crisp suit. Unhurried stride. A face that would vanish in a crowd not because it was plain, but because it was designed to draw no attention unless he wanted it. He stopped beside the booth. "Mara," he said, as if greeting an old friend. I didn't invite him to sit. He sat anyway. He placed a slim phone on the table. Screen dark. A deliberate gesture. "You know my name?" I asked quietly. "I know a great many things," he replied, folding his hands. "But you may call me Miles." So Cole had been right. I studied him, the relaxed posture, the calculated stillness, the faint scent of expensive tobacco that lingered without announcing itself. A man who didn't need to prove power because he was power. "I assume you're the one who's been sending me surveillance footage," I said. He smiled slightly. "Surprising how quickly people forget where the cameras are. You invaded my privacy." He lifted one shoulder, a small elegant shrug. "Privacy is a myth in buildings like this. But I understand why you're upset." Upset. What a small word for what I felt. I leaned forward. "What do you want from me?" He tapped one finger lightly against the table, as if feeling the rhythm of an invisible metronome. "I want honesty," he said. I laughed sharply. "You expect honesty from someone you've been watching like prey? From someone who has already crossed her own moral lines?" "Yes, actually. People are most honest after they've broken themselves open." The words struck deeper than I expected. I steadied my breath. "If you want something, say it." "Very well." He folded his hands. "You and Mr. Thatcher have created complications." "Cole." "Of course." Miles continued. "This hotel's brand relies on the illusion of controlled seduction. Desire without danger. Heat without chaos. Affairs happen all the time in places like this, but they remain invisible." "And we didn't," I muttered. "No," he said pleasantly. "You were terrible at hiding it. And not because you weren't careful, because you weren't willing to walk away." The booth felt suddenly too small. "What do you want?" I repeated. "A choice. A choice." Such a simple word. So rarely simple in reality. I waited. He slid a slim black folder onto the table between us. Inside, I could see printed screenshots, photos, stills from camera footage, timestamps. A curated record of everything I'd been trying to pretend wasn't happening. If I wanted your life destroyed, he said, I would have gone directly to your husband. My stomach twisted. But I didn't, he added. Because I don't want destruction. I want control of the story before someone else takes control of it. Someone else. Aaron. Or the woman he'd been whispering to on the phone. Or the husband of the woman Aaron might have been seeing. There were too many loose threads. Miles studied my face. I'm going to offer you two paths, he said smoothly. Path 1. You walk away from this project, end things with Mr. Thatcher, return home to your husband, and pretend this was a momentary lapse. I felt my throat tighten. Everything I collected, he tapped the folder, stays locked away. And your reputation remains intact. And path 2? I whispered. Path 2, he said, leaning back, is honesty. I blinked. With Aaron? He smiled faintly. No. With me. I didn't understand. He continued. You tell me the truth about how deep you and Mr. Thatcher are involved. You cooperate with me fully. And in exchange, I give you immunity if this becomes messy. You want me to spy on him, I breathed. Spy, he said thoughtfully, is an ugly word. Think of it instead as early detection. If Mr. Thatcher becomes a liability, I need someone who can see it before it costs us. Us, I repeated. Oh yes, he said. If you choose this path, you join us. Not the hotel. Not the staff. Us. I stared at him. You're asking me to betray him. He didn't deny it. He betrayed his own career the moment he touched you, Miles said softly. He knew the rules. And he broke them for you. I felt the words in my bones. That was true. But I had broken rules for him, too. Miles leaned forward, voice dropping to a confidential whisper. Here's the truth, Mara. You think you're trapped between two men. You're not. You're trapped between two versions of yourself. My heartbeat hammered. He continued. One version goes home. Repairs the marriage. Pretends nothing happened. And the other? I asked. The other becomes dangerous. My breath caught. Which version, he asked softly, do you want to become? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not with words. But something in my silence must have given me away because he smiled, a small, knowing smile that didn't reach his eyes. He slid the folder toward me. You have until tomorrow midnight to decide. After that, the decision makes itself. He rose. Straightened his jacket. And before he walked away, he said one final thing. You're not as breakable as you think, Mara. That's why I chose you. Chose. Not discovered. Not stumbled upon. Chose. Like a piece on a board. When he vanished into the hallway shadows, I realized three terrible things. I was already in deeper than I understood. Cole had withheld more than he'd told me. And someone, Miles or otherwise, had decided my life was a piece in a game I didn't realize I was playing. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were the photos in chronological order. But the last page was different. A still frame from footage I had never seen. The image showed Cole. Alone. In the lounge. Talking to someone off frame. His posture was guarded. His shoulders tense. His expression dangerously unreadable. On the bottom corner, a timestamp. 2 weeks before I ever kissed him. My blood went cold. Someone had been watching him long before they watched us. Someone had plans for him. Not me. I was collateral. I was leverage. I was the smallest piece in the room, and still, somehow, the hinge everything was turning on. I felt movement in the room before I heard it. Cole stepped out from the shadows near the back corridor. His face was pale. He had heard everything. Don't choose him, he said hoarsely. I haven't, I whispered. But you're thinking about it, he said. I didn't deny it. He swallowed, walked toward me, and sat beside me in the booth. He wasn't angry. He wasn't jealous. He was afraid. Mara, he said quietly, if you get involved with Miles Kendall, you don't get to come back out. Neither do you, I whispered. He exhaled hard. I was already in before I met you. I stared at him. He finally admitted the thing I'd been sensing for weeks. He offered me a deal last year. I turned him down. Not politely. My chest tightened. So he's punishing you, I realized. Trying to, he said. Until you walked into the picture. Now he's using you. We sat there in silence, the entire room listening. I need the truth, I said. All of it. He nodded. And then he told me everything. His previous job. His whistleblowing. The quiet threats. The reason he had taken the Avalon position, to disappear, to lay low in a respectable environment that didn't ask questions. Until Miles showed up here too. He had been cornered long before I ever met him. I wasn't the bait. I was the opportunity. The leverage. The pressure point. The moment I understood that, something inside me snapped. Not broke. Changed. I wasn't running anymore. Tell me what we do, I said. He looked at me and saw it, the shift. The dangerous version of me Miles had hinted at. Cole leaned closer. We end this, he whispered. How? I asked. He smiled faintly. By giving Miles exactly what he wants. Before I could ask what that meant, he reached into his jacket, pulled out a small USB drive, and placed it on the table. This, he said, is the thing Miles really wants. Not the affair. Not the spectacle. This. What's on it? I asked. Proof, he said. Evidence he wants buried. Of what? He shook his head. Not here. My mind raced. You said we give him what he wants, I whispered. Does that mean? No, Cole cut in sharply. We're not handing this over. We're using it. How? By making it look like we might. And what about my choice? I asked. Miles said I had two paths. Cole reached across the table, covering my shaking hand with his. No, he said softly. You only have one. The ocean slammed against the glass like a warning. This ends tomorrow, he said. Either we walk out of this clean. Or. I pressed when he fell silent. He swallowed. Or we don't walk out at all. The next 24 hours were a blur of fear, adrenaline, and quiet, meticulous planning. We didn't kiss. Didn't touch. We weren't lovers. We were allies. Or fugitives. Or fools pretending we weren't already both. At midnight, I walked back into the glass wall, alone again. Miles was waiting in the same booth. He asked for my choice. I sat. Calm. Steady. The dangerous version of myself fully awake. I slid the USB drive toward him. But only halfway. I choose honesty, I said. His eyes gleamed. I didn't let him pick it up. I'll work with you, I said, but on my terms. You get what you want when I get what I want. And what is it you want? He asked smoothly. Safety, I said. For both of us. He smiled. But it faded the moment Cole stepped out of the shadows with a second USB drive in his hand, not identical, but close enough. 2 copies. Miles stared at us, realizing too late that he wasn't controlling the board after all. You tried to use us, I said quietly. Now we use you. He narrowed his eyes. You're playing a dangerous game. No, Cole said. We're ending one. Long silence. Miles leaned back. Then, to my shock, He smiled, slow, measured, impressed. Very well, he said. We'll reconsider the arrangement. Reconsider. Not end. Not escalate. But renegotiate. We hadn't escaped. But we weren't prey anymore. We were pieces he couldn't move as easily now. And in his world, that counted as survival. He stood, adjusted his suit jacket, and said, "You two are going to be very interesting to work with." Then he left. Like a storm leaving a coastline. Quiet. But promising to return. We didn't speak for a long time afterward. Just sat in the booth, the neon still off, the ocean whispering against the glass. Eventually, I said the thing neither of us had been brave enough to say. We can't stay here. No, Cole agreed. What happens now? I asked. He looked at me for a long time, long enough that I saw it clearly. He wasn't choosing me out of passion. He was choosing me because I chose myself. Now, he said softly. Now we start over somewhere else. Together? I whispered. He reached across the table. His hand shook. Only if you want to. I placed my hand in his. This time, the guilt didn't swallow me. This time, the guilt wasn't louder than the truth. I didn't know if what we were doing was love. Or freedom. Or the aftermath of ruin. But I knew this. The woman who walked into the glass wall months ago, lonely, unseen, sleepwalking through her marriage, was gone. In her place was someone else. Someone messy. Someone brave. Someone dangerous. Someone honest. I squeezed his hand. We walk out together, I said. He nodded once. And we did. Not clean. Not simple. Not safe. But free. The ocean roared behind us. The neon flickered back to life inside the lounge. And the glass wall reflected the woman I had finally become.